All right, welcome. Thank you for being here. Take a nice full inhale through your nose. And as you sigh it out, let your eyes close. Come into the room, onto your mat, and into your body. Connect with your surroundings. Just kind of acknowledge the temperature today, noticing if you might need a little bit more warmth as we progress and get more and more still. Maybe allow yourself to get that now. Otherwise, just making sure you have what you need nearby and try to tap more into the present. Today's practice is going to focus in on the liver and gallbladder meridians. A few other meridians will be stimulated, but those are going to be the two that we're going to focus on. So as we go through, like in previous classes, I'll give you a couple affirmations to hold on to as we're in that pose and see if they sit with you. If you don't like affirmations, don't worry about it. Just enjoy the sensations in your body. And take a full inhale here. And let it go. Start to check in mentally, emotionally. Acknowledge those thoughts, those emotions. Give them validity. Acknowledge them. And then give them some loving kindness. Whatever you're feeling, give it some love, give it some kindness. And then see if you can let it go. Try not to be attached anymore. Taking an inhale here. And let it go. Dropping more into the physical body. Kind of acknowledge where you are today, knowing that we're going to get and hold into these poses without muscle engagement today. So dropping into the joints and those connective tissues, the ligaments and tendons. And just be mindful of those areas. Any area that feels like you're going a little too far, a little too much into your edge or over your edge. Back out of it and just enjoy the sensations that happen with your breath. Take a full inhale here. Sigh it out. Allow your eyes to blink open. And we'll come into our first pose, the toe ankle stretch, because as we learned before, that one gets all of our meridians. So you're going to come onto your hands and knees. If you find that you need a little bit of extra padding for your knees or for your shins, have that blanket there for you. And then come onto your shins. You're going to tuck your toes under. Make sure all 5 toes point the same direction as your knees. And then gently start to sit back on those heels. So we're only going to be here a minute. So this stimulates all of the meridians because all of the yin meridians start in the feet. And especially the liver and gallbladder meridians, they get down into the toes, tops of the feet and the ankles. So this is definitely stimulating those two. And it just keeps ourselves nice and mobile, like getting into our ankles. It may not feel like it now. But the gallbladder and the gallbladder revolves around admiration. So that's its emotion, is admiration. And then the liver meridian, its emotion is happiness. So it all uses a little happiness. So maybe starting to focus in on like an intention surrounding one of those two emotions. Go ahead and point your toes back. Come down onto the tops of your feet, sit back on those heels. If your ankles are too tight, roll up a towel underneath them to give yourself a little bit more support. And if you're not feeling anything in this pose, there's always a little bit adding on. You lean back to lift those knees, and you're gonna find a little bit more of an intense stretch there. You can always take a block if you don't wanna hold yourself with your hands, and rest yourself on the block. So as we go through the different poses today, I will bring up the intentions of which meridian is mostly targeted. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's just one. There's a couple poses that the kidney meridians are going to be the primary focus, but it's good because the kidneys support the liver and the gallbladder. And so with the liver, switch again, slowly go back to that toe stretch. So with the liver meridian, it's two affirmations that might resonate with you today. Are I am happy, since it is about happiness, or I experience freedom. So one of those might resonate a little bit more with you. Maybe neither do. Maybe you want to be happy. So maybe that's the intention. I am happy, I am happy. Maybe you need a little bit more happiness in your life. And then the gallbladder with the admiration. There are 3 different intentions that you might want to focus on. I forgive others. I no longer feel the need to blame. Or I lovingly care for others. And go ahead and switch. Last round here. Not last round yet, sorry. Halfway through. Finding your position. Breathing into it. So just kind of noticing those sensations that are happening in the legs here. A lot of that deep compression from the knees to the ankles. Definitely stimulating the backs of the legs, tops of the ankles, the soles of the feet. And then transitioning through our last round, one more toe stretch, one more ankle stretch. Settling in. See if you can even close your eyes here and just start to notice those different sensations happening. Notice anywhere you're feeling tension, maybe compression of bone on bone or bone on floor. And then slowly transitioning to that last ankle stretch, pointing those toes back, and then maybe leaning into it. Again, just breathing, noticing those sensations that are happening in the tops of the feet now. And slowly transitioning forward, slide those heels to one side, come to a seated position. Take those legs out in front of you, and just pause there for a moment. kind of notice the effects. Notice those sensations in the tops of the shins, the toes, the ankles. Excuse me. And then maybe start to wiggle those toes. Maybe start to make ankle circles or rock the legs from side to side. Excuse me. And then from here, we'll come into long-legged butterfly. So again, you have the option of maybe sitting up on something if that's going to feel okay, or you're just going to start to bring the soles of your feet toward one another and start to have a little wider base here. So a little bit wider hips. And depending on where you want to feel it a little bit more, the longer your legs are apart from one another, you're going to feel it in that gallbladder. So we're going to start with the gallbladder meridian. If you want to feel the gallbladder and the liver meridians, you can bring those heels in a little bit closer, but be mindful that might put too much pressure on the knee. So once you have those legs long, you're just going to start to round forward. So you're going to feel it in your hips, your outer hips, your low back. And if it's too much pressure on that outer knee, just slide a block underneath that for support. If it's too much under your ankles, place a blanket under there. And then just start to round forward. You have option if you need the support for your neck. Head can go to the block or a bolster or something. Or if it's okay for your neck today, let that chin drop to your chest so you feel that all along the spine. And then once you're kind of at your edge, kind of take any little wiggles you need to. And then on your next exhale, sigh that out and settle into stillness. So then we'll settle in here for time, 5 minutes. I'm talking about that gallbladder meridian. Again, those affirmations for that were I forgive others. I no longer feel the need to blame. Or I lovingly care for others. The gallbladder meridian starts just on the outer eye crease, and then it goes out toward the temple, goes down the neck, then it goes back up behind the ear to the forehead, and then it goes from the forehead back down along the back of the head and neck. So there are 2 pairs, one on each side. So both of those pairs running down the back of the neck, across the shoulders, into the back ribs, and it comes around to the front ribs, and then it drops down to the top hip bone, that little hip bone that protrudes, and then it circles back along that back hip to the back side of that bone, goes down the outer glute, so that's what we're kind of stimulating now, that area. Then it goes down the side of the outer leg, ankle, foot, and it ends at the 4th toe on the inside. So the inside meaning closest to the midline. So instead of toward the pinky toe, to the inside of that little middle toe, or that 4th toe. And that's where it ends. So again, this is the motion around admiration. We're about halfway through. So if you're not really feeling those sensations, you want to take it a little bit deeper, start to round a little bit more forward. And just tune into the sensations that's happening in the body as your body breathes and moves with the breath. About 1 more minute here. Taking a full inhale here. Sigh it out. And very slowly taking your time, slowly bring yourself back up to seated. And then helping with your hands, draw those knees up and just hug them in, rounding forward, wrap your arms around those knees, let your forehead drop to the knees. Just take a moment in this tuck position. Notice those sensations in the outer knees, hips, low back. And slowly start to lean back into those hands, take those legs out forward, roll the shoulders back, lift the chest. And then taking any movements you need to for your legs, maybe bounce the knees up and down, maybe point and flex through the feet. Whatever's going to feel best to you. So this next position that we're going to be going into is the dragon series. So we're going to do 2 of them. They're going to be shorter holds because they are a little bit more yang-like than yin-like, but they get into those meridians. Definitely both meridians, the gallbladder and the liver, are going to be getting into this pose. So you're going to come onto your hands and knees. And if you need a little extra support for your back knee this time, you have that support of the blanket. If you need it for the shin, tuck it under the shin. You're going to step your right foot forward. You're going to step that right foot forward until your knee is over your ankle, or sorry, your knee is over your heel, not your ankle. So your foot's going to be slightly in front of your knee. So it's going to get into that outer hip a little bit more. And then you have options, right? You're going to lean forward, uncurl the back toe, see how that feels. And then from here, you have a couple options. You can stay here down low, maybe hands on blocks. If this is too low, maybe hands on knee. Right, we're really just getting into those hips a little bit deeper. We're not going to be here too long, just about 1.5 minutes. See if you can relax that back leg. This is when you get to let those hips kind of drop forward. There's definitely going to be some compression on that right side, some lengthening on the left side. So when we work into these meridian lines, these energy channels, we want to stimulate the energy by compressing and then lengthening those different lines that run around the body. So those 12 meridians, those energy channels. And we do that through our movements. We find compression, we find length, just kind of moving that energy through those channels. A couple more rounds of breath here. And then you can either stay here if you've had enough, you can always come out of it. We're going to a little bit of a twist here. So see if you can bring your both hands to the inside of that foot and then walk your right foot out to the right. And then start to just kind of press onto that right thigh and kind of draw it out to the side. I'm going to kind of turn it sideways a little bit. So you're just going to kind of roll it out to the side. And then this is where if you feel like maybe you can go a little bit deeper now that you've been here, maybe your elbow comes to the blocks, maybe your elbow comes to the floor. See if you can really relax that back leg. So again, we're not going to be here too long. You're just kind of pressing into that leg, so you're actually pressing your right hand into the leg, letting it rotate out to the side. Maybe even rolling to the outer edge of that right ankle, getting into that gallbladder meridian. Just a few more rounds of breath here. Maybe find a little bit more twist in the torso, if it's acceptable. And then slowly start to bring that knee back up to center. Bring your hands back to blocks or floor. Tuck the back toes, shift the hips back, and then bring that right knee down. Pausing there for a moment. You can either stay here on your hands and knees, maybe a little cat-cow. Maybe it feels better to press back into a downward dog. Whatever's going to feel good between sides here. And then when you're ready, starting to transition to that second side. So that left foot's going to step forward. And again, supporting your back leg as much as you need. I have a little knee issue, so I pad underneath my shin so that my knee's not on any padding. And that tends to help, making sure that that knee is over the heel, not the ankle. And then one hand on either side, either on the blocks or on your knee. And then starting to settle in. Finding some stillness with your breath. Notice the sensations. See if you can relax that back leg. And so these energy channels, these meridians, run throughout our body. And they run very similar to the lines of our muscles and near the veins and the artery system as well. But it's interesting to think of the energy flow, and sometimes it gets blocked. And the word for that blockage is there's these grunties, these things that block these systems. And those could be emotions, they could be trauma, they could be a lot of different things that you might be holding on to that blocks those energy channels. And so by these movements and by the compression and lengthening of these sides, we start to move that energy. So it's kind of like taking, if you have a little blockage in a hose, and the water or air is not moving freely because something's there, you kind of bend and straighten it, and you kind of work out those systems. Slowly start to bring yourself back up if you've gone down, and then bring both hands to the inside of that left foot. And then start to rotate that left knee out to the side, pressing onto that thigh with the left hand. And if it's okay, maybe you drop to your elbow on the blocks or onto the floor, finding a little bit more of a twist. Try to keep that back leg relaxed. Maybe start to roll onto that outer ankle if it's okay for your ankle and knee. Few more rounds of breath here. Exhale fully here. And slowly bring that knee back to center. Bring your hands back to the block or floor. And then slowly slide that left leg back. And again, your choice, maybe stay on your hands and knees, maybe a couple rounds of cat-cow, or maybe find a little downward dog. Take some time to let that pose go. And then when you're ready, making your way back down, all the way to seated. And then maybe just hug those knees in for a moment, find that tuck position, allowing yourself to pause. And slowly starting to sit back up, taking those legs out in front of you, and then taking them wide. So just kind of noticing where you are. Maybe you need a little something under your hips. Maybe you need to more or less bend your knees instead of putting something under your hips. So remember, we want to get into the hips, not the hamstrings. You're going to feel a little bit of that, but you want to get into those hips instead. And then you're going to start to kind of bring yourself forward. And again, you can bring yourself forward onto blocks, onto the floor, but then try to just kind of let those legs relax. So it's called dragonfly or straddle, one of the two. And again, if this is going to be too much for you, maybe too much into your back, you can take your right leg in and do half dragonfly. So you have that as an option if you would like. And then just start to settle in here. So in the center, as we're folding forward in the center, this gets into that liver meridian, the meridian of happiness when it's balanced. And it starts at the inner edge of the big toe. It goes across the top of the foot, into the inner ankle, the inner calf, the inner knee, that inner thigh we're feeling now, across the top of the hips to the back of the hip bone, very similar to that gallbladder line. And then it comes up to the low ribs on your backside, coming around to the front side of the low ribs. And then it works itself up kind of like halfway from your midline along the ribs and ends just below the nipple line. That's where it goes in, and it goes straight down to your liver. So this liver meridian has two affirmations to it. And maybe these are things you want to think about. I am happy, or I experience freedom. If it's okay for your neck, you can just start to let that neck dangle, or if it's better that you rest it in your hands or on a block or a pillow, you have that option as well. Trying to relax those legs as much as possible. Just letting yourself drop down into the pose. And then noticing the sensations. Noticing how your body moves as you breathe. If you feel any of those grunties, those blockage points, those tension areas, see if you can direct your breath to that area. Maybe even imagine that meridian line starting to clear out. Start to move more freely with energy. You have about 1 more minute here. And take a full inhale here. Side out. Slowly use your hands to walk yourself back up. Once you're up, very slowly help those knees up one at a time. Sliding those knees in once again. Giving them a little hug, rounding forward. And then leaning back, taking those feet a little bit wider. Do maybe a little windshield wiper with the legs, get a little internal rotation there. And then we're going to hold this just for another couple minutes. So we're going to go to each side. We're going to take those legs back out again. Taking those legs wide again. So this time we're just going to do a little twist, and adding that twist in is going to get not only that liver meridian, but also the gallbladder. So taking yourself and kind of slightly rotate toward that right leg. If you feel too much pull on the left knee, maybe bend it. If that's still not going to work and it's too much pull, take that left knee in. And then you're just going to start to lengthen over that right leg. And it may not be a lot, right? You might have to have your hands down, your head might be resting on a block on your leg. Just find that little bit of rotation to find that compression in the top of the hip, the top of the thigh, or no, sorry, the top of the hip flexor there. Again, see if you can relax the legs. Exhale fully here. Using your hands, slowly come back up to center. And then when you're ready, start to twist toward that left leg and start to lengthen yourself out over it. Again, if you need any support under the knees, or maybe that back knee needs to bend, whatever you need, let the legs be heavy, let the shoulders and arms be heavy, and just notice the sensations as you breathe. Exhale fully. Slowly start to make your way back up to center. And then slowly start to bend those knees again, one at a time. Hugging them in for a moment. Rounding forward. Just acknowledging those sensations that are happening in the legs and the low back and the hips. And then once again, lean back into those hands. Take those feet wide, maybe do a little windshield wipers. Getting that internal rotation. And then maybe those hands come back a little bit closer underneath you. Your feet come to center and you just lift those hips, doing a couple hip lifts. Maybe you hold, maybe you go up and down, depending on how you're feeling. Doing any other motions that are going to feel good in your body. Taking this time to connect. And then as you're ready, we're going to start to transition onto our belly for Sphinx pose. So have any props that you need or might need underneath you. So Sphinx pose is definitely going to compress that liver meridian on the front body. And then it's also going to get into our kidney meridian a little bit, compressing into that low back. And just finding yourself in Sphinx. Let those legs relax. I like to use a little prop underneath just so I feel like I have a little bit more lift and length into the belly. And then just take a moment, squeeze the glutes, and then let them relax. If you're finding there's a lot of tension in the low back, take your legs a little bit wider and kind of let those heels drop in. And then we'll just settle in here. And again, if you feel like you need more stimulation into that low back, you can place a blanket or pillows under your elbows so that you have a little bit more compression into that low back. But be mindful when you start to lift, you might want to intentionally squeeze your glutes to protect your low back. And if that's the case, come down and see if you can relax your glutes. And then settle into your breath. Maybe bring yourself back to one of those intentions, those affirmations. And if it feels good, maybe that head starts to drop down, chin to chest. Or maybe you start to rest your head on a block or a pillow. About 2 more minutes here. And by no means do you ever need to stay in a pose longer than you need to. We have about 1 more minute here, and for some of you, if you do feel you want to do a little bit more of a deeper pose, you have seal pose, so your hands would come to the floor, and you start to straighten those arms, let the shoulders drop to the ears, and that's going to create a deeper compression into that low back. Be mindful that you can keep relaxing through the glutes, through the booty. If it's too deep, allow yourself to stay in Sphinx. Just breathe here for about 30 more seconds. If you're in seal pose, slowly come down to Sphinx. Take a full inhale here. Side out. Slowly start to lift your head, slide those hands back. Press yourself back to your hands and knees. Maybe a couple rounds of cat-cow, but don't have them too deep. Just nice and easy, just little tiny rounding and flexing. Not going too deep yet. And then eventually you'll make your way into child's pose. Using any props you need to. Maybe see if you can take those knees a little bit wider than normal. Getting into that outer hip. And dropping back onto those heels. Maybe stopping at your elbows to begin. And then slowly over the next minute, start to lengthen yourself out. Arms can come forward. Or if it feels better to bring them back by your heels, you have that as an option. Take a full inhale here. And let it go. Slowly pressing yourself up. And then come to seated. And I'm just going to stay sideways on my mat. So we're going to do 2 poses together. We're going to come into square. And then we're going to take that into sleeping swan. So you're going to take your left shin, it's going to be placed on the bottom, and you're going to try and get your feet into a square. So you have 2 options. I'm going to face the front to begin. So 2 options, your right shin's in front of your left, and you're trying to get your knees as close as you can down. Some of you may be able to take that right ankle, cross it over the left, And then if this is too much, you need a little support, you just kind of wedge that block under there so that you can sit here. But again, you want to take that ankle over the knee so the ankle bone's not pressing into the knee. And this is going to get definitely into those hips, right? That outer hip area. So you have that as an option, or if that's just going to feel too uncomfortable, right shin in front of that left shin, trying to get those shins parallel toward one another. And then if it's okay, start folding forward. Maybe just staying upright is where you want to be. We won't be here long. We'll be here maybe for a minute and a half or so. So nothing too deep, maybe 2 minutes at the most. So again, this is targeting that gallbladder meridian, running around the outside of the leg. If you feel it on your inner thigh, it's definitely getting into that liver meridian. Definitely targeting the hips. So you can kind of relax your legs. Just making sure your knees are not taking the brunt of this. If you feel any tingling or stabbing sensations in your knees, especially the outer edges of your knees or behind your kneecap, find some other position to be in, something that's a little more kinder to the knees. That might mean taking your feet a little closer to your pelvis. Exhale fully here. Slowly start to bring yourself back up. You're going to keep that right shin in front, and you're going to slowly start to slide that left leg back. Slide it to the side to begin, just pause. Just kind of loosening up that left hip. And then start to transition, draw that right heel in toward your groin. Send that left leg all the way back. And then see how it feels to come all the way up onto your knee. So your knee's stacked right under you, you're sitting on your heel, and your back leg is relaxed. So that's first version. If that feels okay, and maybe you can lean forward. If you're not feeling anything here, like you're just sitting on your heel, you're going to take that right knee and rotate the leg out to the right so that your heel now is inside of you, and then start to lengthen out. Maybe you go all the way to the floor, but be very mindful of that right knee. You might need something under your right hip to get a little less compression on that knee. Definitely getting into that hip area. Finding some length along the back leg. Just kind of notice those sensations that are happening here. Take a full inhale here. And side out. Slowly to come out of this, start to roll yourself over toward the right. Start to draw that left leg in. And then bring those legs back out straight. Pausing there for a moment, just kind of release that right leg. See if you can even notice the energy flowing through that right leg as you release it. Make any movements you might need to between sides, maybe bouncing the legs, maybe wipers, whatever's going to feel best for you. And then we'll start to transition back to that square. So this time the left shin is either on top of the right or it's in front of the right. And then start to settle in, letting yourself notice what might need a little bit of support. Maybe you're lengthening forward, maybe you're just holding in whatever pose you're in. Just start to play with it, see how it feels. Noticing each side will be a little bit different. This is one that I like to play with and where I like to really direct my breath to those areas where I feel that tension. Exhale fully here. Slowly start to make your way up. Keeping that left shin in front. Slide that right leg out to the side, bending the knee. Just pausing there, let that right hip open a little. And then starting to draw that left heel in. Take that right leg extended back, come up onto the knee, bring that knee underneath you, heel underneath you, and just see how that feels. Maybe lengthen out a moment if you're not feeling too much in any area. Start to take that left knee to the left, so the left heel is more toward the center line, and then start to lengthen forward. Try to relax the legs. And again, if you need a little bit more support, you always can have a block or a bolster underneath that hip. Sometimes a bolster feels a lot better than a block, just to give that knee a little bit more support. And then start to settle in here. Finding that stillness, noticing how your body moves as it breathes. And take a full inhale here. And let it go. Slowly start to walk your hands in as you roll toward that left side. Slide that right knee in, and then right leg all the way forward. Left leg forward. And pausing there for a moment, just kind of noticing that sensation happening on that left leg. And then take any movements that you need to. Moving yourself around, allowing yourself to move freely. And then from here, we're going to make our way into a twist. Have any props you need to. I'm going to talk you through or show you 3 different variations. We'll start with a simple one and work more into a deeper one. Stop wherever you need to stop. Go ahead and lay down on to your back. Maybe have a block over to one side. Maybe have your strap if you want to do the cat pulling tail variation. I think we did that one last week. Go ahead and roll yourself down onto your back. Pause there, bend your knees. And so we're going to start with just a simple twist first. I like to have my block nearby just so my knees don't always get to the floor on this first one. They have a little bit of support. So you're going to draw both knees into your chest. And then you're going to draw both knees to your left. Keep that right shoulder on the floor. And then at one point, you're going to find a spot where you kind of get stuck and you can't really go any further. That might mean your knees slide apart. So maybe you need a block or a bolster between your knees. But try to keep the knees as close as you can to your chest. Just kind of notice that effect into your low back or upper back. That might help your right shoulder stay down. Just kind of breathe into this here. So we'll kind of pause along the way into each of these poses. We'll gradually get deeper, working deeper into those meridians, deeper into the hips and into the spine. Again, let go of that muscle energy. Allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to let go. So this is feeling good and you're feeling the sensations you need to, you can stay here or you can always come back to this pose. Otherwise, you're going to take that bottom knee, the left knee, extend it out straight toward the end of your mat and let that right knee kind of drop over a little bit more to the left. And again, that's where you might need that support of the block so that you can let go of that muscle energy by holding on to the leg. So if you start to feel any tingling in that right shoulder, it just might mean that your hand's a little too high. You might need to slide it down lower, or maybe even take your right hand and rest it on your right ribs. So you notice this stretch here gets a little bit more into the hip and the low back, whereas that first one maybe got more into the mid and upper back, or the rotation of the spine. And then again, you can stay here if you're at your edge and you're feeling those sensations and you're happy, stay here. Otherwise, you can start to take that bottom knee, bend the heel to the bum, take your right hand, reach back for the top of that foot. That's where you might need that strap. And then start to pull that foot more toward your bum. Lengthen that knee underneath you, maybe even stack the hips on top of one another. And then let that right shoulder drop back again. So this one, now you're getting into the top of that left thigh, into the hip, as well as into the outer hip of that top leg. Hitting both of those meridians, the liver and the gallbladder. About 1 more minute here. Taking a full inhale here. Sigh it out. If you have the grip of the foot, slowly release that foot. Taking that bottom knee, slide it back up toward the top knee. And then take your right arm, roll it over to the left so you're laying on your left side. Just rounding in, let everything settle back into neutral. Noticing the effects of that pose on the body. And then when you're ready, roll yourself onto your back. Bring your pelvis and shoulders to neutral. And then we'll switch to the other side. So draw those knees into the chest. Keeping the knees as close as you can into the chest, start to drop them to the right. And again, use any props you might need to on this side between the knees. So you just let go of that muscle energy. Let that left shoulder stay on the floor for now. And try to keep those knees as close as you can to your chest. So finding that twist from the mid to upper back. And just notice how your body moves as you breathe. Settling into that stillness. And if this is feeling good, please feel free to stay here. But if you're feeling you need to find a different edge, a different stretch, start to take that bottom knee, slide that leg straight down toward the end of your mat, and let that left knee continue to drop to the right, using any props you need to under it. Again, just check in with that left shoulder, making sure it's feeling okay. If you can't keep your arm out, you can always bend your elbow and rest your hand on your left ribs. See if you can relax your legs. And just notice the sensations as you breathe. And again, you can stay here as long as this is feeling good, or if you want to do the cat pulling tail, bend your bottom knee so your heel comes towards your glutes. Reach back with that left hand to the top of the foot. Start to draw that foot back closer to the glutes as your knee goes lengthening to the end of the floor. Maybe drop that left hip on top of the right. And then holding there. A little deeper stretch into the front of that bottom thigh. A little bit more stimulation on the left shoulder. About 1 more minute here. And taking a full inhale here. And let it go. If you have that back ankle, slowly release it. And start to draw that bottom knee up toward the top knee as you roll toward the right. Drawing both knees in, using that right arm as a pillow. Pause there. And then slowly making your way back to your back, laying on your back. Bring those hips and spine back to neutral. Maybe do a little windshield wiper with the legs. Maybe do some hip lifts. Whatever's going to feel best here. Just adding a little movement in. And then from here, having any props around you, being prepared for Shavasana. Taking your legs out, using any support under your knees, your low back, your neck. Maybe cover your eyes, maybe even take a blanket if it's cold at your house, like it is mine right now, and place that over your torso. Just finding a little bit more warmth here. then start to settle into that stillness. Get any little wiggles you need out. Maybe remind yourself of your intention, of your affirmation today. And then take one more full inhale here. And then sigh it out. Settling into stillness, into Shavasana. If at any time you feel like you are complete in this pose and you want to end, you have that option. Otherwise, stay here for a few minutes, surrendering into this final stillness to allow our body to reset and restore. I'll bring you out of Shavasana with 3 bells. Take rest. feeling free to stay here any length longer that you need to restore. If you're ready to end your practice, start to deepen your breath. Start to bring some movement into the fingers, the toes, the wrists and ankles, arms and legs. And take the arms back behind you, slide your feet together. Give yourself a long stretch, maybe lean to the right and then to the left. Maybe even give a big yawn. And when you're ready, bend the knees. Either hug the knees into the chest or windshield wiper those legs again. Whatever's going to feel best for you. And then when you're ready, roll over into one side, using your arm as a pillow. Pausing here just for a moment. Just noticing the effects, the shifts from the practice today. And then when you're ready, mindfully pressing yourself up, come all the way up to seated. Once you've found that seat, allow your eyes to close, bring your hands to your heart center. Allowing yourself to come into the room, onto your mat, and into your body. Connecting with one of those affirmations that we held during this practice today. And allowing the strength, the energy, and the breath of this practice help you continue with that affirmation as you transition off your mat and into your evening ahead. We'll seal the practice in with one Om or a sigh of the breath, your choice. Exhale fully here. Nice full inhale. Bow your head slightly. Take a moment. Think of one thing in your life that you truly are thankful for. And then holding on to that image in your mind's eye as you raise your head with a smile. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking care of your liver and your gallbladder. Drink lots of water. Eat veggies for some luck. Namaste.